Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Out to Washington, D.C., our great friend David Bozell joining us from foramerica.org. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I am living the dream. You don't sound awake and ready to go here, man. We hit the ground running.
I'm awake. I'm sorry.
You got to be in the breakdown position here with us. You know.
I'm lined up. I just broke the huddle. I'm ready to rock.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to do a little qualifier here. You're going to go, oh my goodness, Kevin Miller. Why do I come on with this guy? David Bozell, World Cup guy or not?
Yeah, I am. A little. I've watched quite a bit of the games.
Oh,
yeah,
please,
I've enjoyed the tournament.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt me.
Please,
no.
I have enjoyed some of the games. I used to play when I was a kid. I used to play goalie, which is really the only important position.
Sure.
And so seeing these guys on the world stage is kind of fun. Actually, there's been a lot of bad goalkeeping in this tournament, which is kind of fun to poke fun at. But yeah, it's been a good tournament. I mean, who wants to root for France, right? Nobody. So
well, maybe Bernie Sanders.
We're all Croatians at this point.
Well, maybe Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The usual suspects.
Yeah.
All right, David Bozell. I so much for soccer bashing with you. So we'll continue on with bashing your review and commentary of Mr. Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh, hopefully Justice Kavanaugh, and the reaction from the usual suspects.
Yeah. It's cue the REM "End of the World" song. For anything that the Trump administration does, and specifically with the Kavanaugh appointment. Obviously a bright guy. You got to be a bright guy to get on the list. I think his confirmation is going to be a lot smoother than. I mean, the press wants to make this a battle royale, for the ratings, and there are going to be a lot of political interests who will want to sell it as a battle royale. For fundraising interests, but I think he was nominated part and parcel because Susan Collins, Barbara Murkowski, they signaled their support for him, and the Trump operation wanted a smooth confirmation, so they'll get all 50 Republicans, and he'll get in, and I actually suspect that some of the Democrats. These red state Democrats that I'm sure you've talked about that are in a little bit of a pickle, the Joe Manchins, the Donnellys from Indiana, Heitkamp from North Dakota, those folks that are in tough races, I think they'll vote for him too. And it'll tick off the base of the left, but I think they'll do it quickly. I think the nomination will go quicker than most. And he's well qualified. The Kavanaugh people are pushing out the fact that he's done 300 opinions, and some of us are trying to cycle through some of those to see how many of those are good. There are a couple of warts in his resume vis-a-vis Obamacare, which is kind of a big one. But you never know how a judge is going to rule until they get there. So I think most of the conservative movement, not all, was putting faith in the Trump administration that to date their judicial nominations have been stellar, rock solid, some of the best work that they've done. And so we're going to put our faith in that record and apply it to the Capitol nomination. So I think he'll get in, and there'll be some noise, but I do think he'll get in.
David Bozell joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Isn't it, though, ridiculous? We've been playing the clips really for entertainment purposes only. When we sit back and, okay, we don't even know the guy's name and he's bad. It's horrible. It's horrific. He's the worst ever. Roe v. Wade's going to be overturned. There is no logic. And I'm thinking in a world that craves authenticity, transparency, credibility, they've just blown it.
Right. The left has really overstepped and overreached. If everything is a cataclysmic disaster, then nothing is. And I think the American people are starting to collectively just roll their eyes at some of the loudest voices on the left. And as they just continue to bash not just the president, but just at large for being responsible for the end of the world. Just let's take Roe v. Wade, for example. There's nothing that a Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh can do about Roe v. Wade by himself. The case got brought to the court. That might be a little bit of a different story. But look, when you look at things like science, that magical word, science, and science is showing that babies are suffering pain after 20 weeks, can feel the pain of their abortion. And no Democrat wants to even acknowledge that in any discernible way. Won't even entertain a discussion about perhaps limiting abortions after 20 weeks because science, and when it comes to climate change, quote unquote, they're all about science. But when it comes to abortion, they want to dismiss it. So it's just, but there's everything is just this apocalyptic fervor that they bring to the table. And it's replicated. These networks, MSNBC brought on 24 guests the night of the Kavanaugh nomination. Not one of them said a positive thing about the guy. Not one out of 24. So it's just, their agenda continues to reveal itself, and I just think they're just overplaying their hand, and it's there's nothing constructive about their quote policy prescriptions, right?
Well, David Bozell, let me jump in here for 2 seconds. I think this sums up your point at foramerica.org on KIDO Talk Radio. There's a photo now trending that after, and this guy is perhaps too good to be true. Here you have Brett Kavanaugh, that after he gets nominated by the president, he spends the rest of the evening feeding the homeless hours after being nominated to the Supreme Court. Who does that?
Right. He went out and did a charity. It wasn't even a charity event. It was a prior commitment to feed the homeless at a homeless shelter. He kept it, and somebody spotted him, and that picture is going viral. I mean, it seems like a man of the community. He's coached multiple basketball teams. He's got his daughters are involved in the Catholic League sports in the area, and he's involved in those programs. He's done a bunch of charity works. I mean, The Hill, which is kind of like the Bible for Washington political staff, the Hill.com had this hit piece about Kavanaugh that he put his Washington Nationals baseball tickets on a credit card, and he was in debt. And then kind of buried a couple paragraphs down, they said, and then he paid the credit card off. And the headline was that Kavanaugh had accrued this massive debt, paying for tickets. But then what they don't tell you is that, and then he paid it off. I mean, it's just ridiculous clickbaiting. I think unless he's got some kind of skeleton that, because the margins are razor thin, Kevin. So, and they can't afford to lose any votes, Republicans. So unless some sort of skeleton reveals itself, at which point, at that point, all bets are off. But unless that happens, I think he's going to sail through. And I think he's going to pick up some Democrat votes along the way, because some of these red state Democrats are just not of the sort of socialistic, apocalyptic, drum banging crowd. That's not what West Virginia put Joe Manchin in there for. That's not what North Dakota put Heidi Heitkamp in there for. So I think they're going to vote for him, and I think he'll be a very good justice, and hopefully he applies the constitutional test to everything that he does. That's all you can ask for.
David Bozell joining us here, KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. How about this one? The president's running wild in Europe. I can't wait to see the Sunday shows because it's almost, I'm trying to think. You remember a sport called basketball? I know you're a soccer guy, but in the days when the NBA was great, you had Chick Hearns for the LA Lakers, a radio announcer, and you had Johnny Most for the Celtics. And growing up a Celtic guy, I mean, Johnny Most would cheer for the Celtics. Bill Laimbeer was the baby-faced assassin. And Robert Parrish, the chief, could do no wrong. I think that we have Stephanopoulos and Todd. They remind me of the Homer announcers when they're cheering for the Democrats and everybody else. The president continues to wow them in Europe, continues to say the right things. I mean, how reckless are they going to be over this weekend, review and commentary of the president? They just can't seem to look at him objectively.
One of the more surprising elements of the Trump presidency, for me anyways, when Trump is on the world stage, I think he's been at his best. I mean, Trump internationally is the best Trump. You're not being honest with yourself if you don't think some of this is entertaining. I mean, for him to stand in front of an international audience and say that Germany is owned by Russia, that's a huge deal. Now, for the Washington political scene, it's the Stephanopoulos, the Chuck Todds. They take it as this great offense that they listen to like the Max Boots of the world, who just think that now America has lost its standing internationally. But then you get out of this bubble, this Washington, New York bubble, and you talk to real people who hear the comments, and they said, finally, our president is representing us internationally. We've been footing this NATO bill forever, for decades, disproportionately, while Germany collects oil and gas and other energy assets from Russia. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So this is one of the reasons, again, why he won, and one of the reasons why he's, as every poll shows, he's basically the most popular Republican president within the Republican Party ever. And it's partly because how good he is on the international stage representing the American taxpayer. And there's been a real sea change from early 2000s Bush neoconservatism, let's go out in the world and sprinkle democracy seeds all over the planet and hope they grow, to Trump, which is trying to recoup a lot of these investments either back or get these folks to start investing their own equitable amount.
Sure, start paying up.
And start paying up. And I think a lot of the country appreciates it, and how he gets it done is entertaining, and so that makes it even better. So I think he's been at his best on the international stage.
David Boesel, we could go on and on. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. Please stay out of trouble.
Thank you, Kevin. Don't bash soccer too much, okay? It is the beautiful game when they're not flopping, okay? and when they are, it's a travesty.
David, as always, we appreciate you. Take care, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. Take it easy.
Our great friend David Boesel. Okay, she's been very patient. Let's get to her. We're not going to take another break. We're going to go to Cindy in Caldwell with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Cindy.
Actually, your topics this morning I have been fascinated by. I found it interesting talking about the, not the young man, but the young lady wrestling. And I do hope she does well against, that's a very dangerous sport for women, and I could go into it. My girlfriend Palma's daughter did it for a while till her
You're talking about our interview with Kat Zagano.
Very,
and
very interesting.
I will tell you, Cindy, if you can find it streaming or somewhere, I'm looking for it. That documentary on her, I mean, she's a single mom. She has to leave her son. It'll break your heart. One of the best documentaries I've ever seen.
Thank you. I will. I hope you mention the documentary or again about Lavoy Finnegan. I actually will find someone to do that for me, but it just concerns me. As the gentleman wrestler said, he's doing it and he's looking to himself to see about his manhood, and I hope that if that's her choice to do what she sees as an occupation and fulfilling herself. But I was hoping that I just wanted to make a comment, and I hope you do have Mr. Simpson on, because it just greatly concerns me, Kevin, and I'm going to tell you why. I know who's meeting with who, but I don't feel our legislative body gets much done. And I know the big deal is about now the Supreme Court, which I feel just overwields its power. It's rather tragic what has happened, and I actually do believe that the only way to solve this is a convention of states. But that said, you know what? It concerns me with all this talk and about what's happening on our borders and the legislation, and then earlier on you're talking about the children, that illegal people, and it is hard to document, and I could tell you stories trying to place them in high schools in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But, Mr. Simpson greatly concerns me because I will tell you he's meeting with whoever down in Washington, the same, the same person who, did not vote for H.R. 4760, which was a bill that would stop and amend immigration by eliminating the visa lottery system, giving $30 million for wall construction. I mean, having, even things to be said to DACA. And his reasoning behind this, when I finally got his letter a couple of days ago, I just rather sickened me. Yes, you are for cultural diversity. He's for legal immigration, but he couldn't in good faith support that bill because he felt that it jeopardized 20% of the Idaho's economy because of the workforce for the dairies, and he was concerned about the guest worker program. Well, seriously, I think we have enough able-bodied Americans. It would seem to me that this legislative body could get E-Verify passed, could get something like that workfare. I think we have enough. I see them all around, hardworking Americans that would do these jobs, even if you take the people, out of our prisons and jails. I think they would welcome doing something that you can't get in there, that you can't get them off of a entitlement system and say an able-bodied person between 18 and X amount of years old, you want to go get something and stand in front of me and buy your pork roast, in Albertsons. Well, you can just go to work, sir. So I guess it pretty much sickens me, and to me, Mr. Simpson is a trigger. The same Mr. Simpson that didn't want, a Hillary Clinton investigation, gross negligence, a violation of federal felony statutes, all that this woman did, and yet he wants us to continue to spend trillions of dollars, millions, on this Mueller, and I agree with the president, it's nothing more than a witch hunt. So I guess when they're all meeting with each other like a meet and greet, they haven't really done this legislative body, any of them. So Mr. Crapo is going to go find out about the character of, I think it's hysterical, the character of Mr. Kavanaugh, the same Mr. Crapo and the whole lot of them, that when they weren't going to vote or stand up for our president because they were pulling their own moral litmus test on what their faith told them about our president. Right. It's just ludicrous.
Cindy, we're the home for ludicrous. Thank you.
Bye, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
107.5 FM, 580 AM, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Thank you all for joining us. The president earlier this morning holding a news conference. You'll hear that coming up after Fox News. Also, our top story, the Hammonds have returned home. If you haven't heard about this, they had a big welcome for them in Burns, Oregon yesterday. And Morgan Philpott, the attorney for Dwight and Stephen Hammond, had this to say concerning their time spent in the pen.
I think the Hammonds would be the first to say that the plight of the Western rancher or the Western farmer is not even close to over.
We need to talk about that next. First, traffic at
7's Every Gabbard.
And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Let's hear more from Morgan Philpott, the attorney for the Hammonds.
When it comes to helping people like the Hammond family, I look at legal ways to help them through the judicial process. And I think that's why we're looking at a potential civil action on their behalf to try and make sure they're protected in the future and that these kind of things don't continue to happen.
By the way, we did reach out to Ammon Bundy, and I know he has a lot of friends in the area. We haven't heard back from him. I'm sure he's getting inundated, but If you know Ammon, we would love to have him on, and I know Ray has reached out to other members of the Bundy family. We would love to have them on to talk about this. For those of you, and by the way, it's funny, have you noticed how politically correct our region is becoming? And I don't mean to pick on the people from out of state. Look, I'm from out of state, but I'm not politically correct. Do you believe that Idaho, the Treasure Valley, your community, is becoming too sensitive, overly sensitive? I'll explain it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning.
KIDO Talk Radio, your exclusive home for Fox News Radio, your home for Fox News here in the Treasure Valley. Let's go to the White House. That's right, the White House. John Decker joining us from Fox News Radio. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing today?
Not bad. What did you think of, I'm sure you were working when the president was holding his news conference this morning, entertaining folks throughout the world, informing them of his thoughts on the NATO summit.
Well, the president made it clear that he put some pressure on our partners on NATO to contribute more financially to NATO. And the president said that he got a commitment that they will indeed do that in a shorter time period than they had previously committed to. So that's obviously something that the president is pleased about. He's already arrived in London, where he'll meet face-to-face with both British Prime Minister Theresa May and also Queen Elizabeth. And then he's going to have a little R&R, play a little golf up in Scotland, and then the big summit that he'll have with Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's set for the 16th, which is Monday.
You know, do you ever, I don't want to say get tired, but I'm just sitting there in the ease in which he answers questions, and I love the one where they were talking about the Kurds, and are you going to support the Kurds? And he said, well, yeah, you know, I love the Kurds. The Kurds are good people. We really like the Kurds. The Kurds are great. And then he moved on. It was vintage the president. He said something really without saying anything. Maybe that's what all politicians do, John.
Well, that's right. They do that. They cover lots of presidents. They can talk a long time without answering a question. The president has mastered this, as a result of all of his time in the public eye, not just as president of the United States. And, you saw with that particular question, he gave an answer, but it wasn't obviously a satisfactory answer because it doesn't answer the question that was posed to him. But that's, what the president does. And so sometimes he bites and answers the question. Sometimes he doesn't. In that particular instance, he did not.
John Decker joining us, Fox News Radio on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. All right, John, Brett Kavanaugh making the rounds. Judge Kavanaugh hoping to be Justice Kavanaugh. Is this any different like the many Supreme Court nominations, the process that you've been a part of before?
Well, it's going to be very similar. So the rollout already very similar to what we saw for Justice Neil Gorsuch, a primetime announcement in the East Room. I was there on Monday night for this latest primetime announcement. And the president now dealing with a narrower margin in the Senate in terms of confirming this latest nominee, narrower than what existed during Neil Gorsuch's nomination. Still, I think at the end of the day, the president will likely keep all of the Republican senators in check. All of them will likely vote for Brett Kavanaugh. And I think that, there might be 3-4 possible Senate Democrats who vote for Judge Kavanaugh as well.
Well, that would make it easy for them if the Republicans hold the ranks.
Well, that's right. If they do just that, there's nothing, they don't even need any Democrats. They can do it just simply along party lines. But I think they'd like to pick off a Democrat or 2 or 3 or 4 just to make life a little bit easier. Right?
Sure. Under the times that we live in.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on any type of expectations that we should have after the president, leaves Europe, not Europe, but he goes to Russia. I'm sorry. The preview with Putin.
Well, the president will be meeting President Putin in Helsinki, Finland. That's on Monday. The president seemed to be lowering expectations for that particular one-on-one session. But as you know, with the president, we can expect the unexpected. So I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to what we will see on Monday before, during, and after the president's one-on-one meeting with President Putin. The president sort of has made clear that he thinks that better relations with Russia are in America's national interest. He's made that clear pretty consistently. Some of our allies don't see it the same way. Even some of members of Congress on the Republican side don't see it the same way. So they'll be watching very closely as well.
John Decker joining us, Fox News Radio. You just wonder what the president is going to do, considering he doesn't sleep much. He's on social media with a weekend in Europe after all these meetings and before he meets with Putin. It was fascinating when he was asked about this. Putin, friend or foe? Well, I neither. He's a competitor. Well, are you worried about Russian aggression? Well, that's why we have NATO, I guess. You don't really hear those comments. Or, John, you've been there all the time from past presidents.
No, you don't. You hear a lot of niceties. You don't really see any presidents saying anything that would rock the boat as it relates to NATO. This president's different, and he has clearly rocked the boat. That was his intention, and certainly our allies have paid attention to that. They're cognizant of what the president's message was, and I think that to a certain extent they're responding to that message, given the fact that they've pledged to increase their financial commitment to NATO, after the president spoke out about this quite a bit during the week leading up to the NATO summit and during the NATO summit itself.
John Decker, last question. What was it like being in the East Room? It's an older room. It's one of the more famous rooms. You're an attorney. You're a reporter. You've done everything else. But to be there for that moment as a person when you see Justice Scalia's wife, Ed Meese, be engulfed in the history of that moment.
Well, I've been fortunate in terms of being there for when presidents, not just President Trump, have nominated individuals to the U.S. Supreme Court. And, obviously dating myself, but quite a few members of the U.S. Supreme Court, I've watched their entire confirmation process play out. So on Monday night, it was more history. I do think that when I was at that event on Monday night, I was seeing what will likely be a future Supreme Court justice. So you sort of take it all in and you realize you're witnessing history.
John, have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. You too. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on your show today.
We love having John Decker on. We appreciate him. Joining us now, thanks to Pro-Life, is Ammon Bundy on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Mr. Bundy, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing, Kevin?
Well, thank you for joining us. I know you're very busy. We were just opining about it last half hour that we wondered your thoughts on the Hammond's release. We played you and your wife's message on Facebook yesterday right here on the radio, but we'd love to hear what you have to say, sir.
Well, the Hammonds were innocent. They've always been innocent. And so every minute that they were in prison, was a great injustice. And I felt that, and I think many, many people felt that and continued to push to have them freed. One thing that people may not understand is when we went to the refuge there and we began to openly protest, it wasn't just, a rash thing or something that we did just immediately because we were mad or upset. We tried for months to try to get our elected representatives, our sheriff, all the way from the local county representatives all the way up to the U.S. Congress to stop and take a look what was happening to the Hammonds. And none of them would do it. Not a one of them. They all just wanted to ignore it. They were afraid of it. And then eventually what happened was the FBI began to contact them and and actually threatened them if they responded to our requests, our grievances. And so, really what's happened here is it's come all the way, the complaints, the grievances, the concerns, the injustice has had to climb all the way to somebody, all the way to the president, until someone finally saw that this was a great injustice and used their power to eliminate the suffering of the Hammonds. But it's a shame it had to go that far. I mean, it's a celebration. The Hammonds are home. There's no doubt about that. It's a great victory for, I think, freedom. But it's a shame that it had to go that far.
Mr. Bundy, I don't know if you've ever seen the American Standoff documentary, but I'm amazed by Mrs. Hammond's story about you, about how you heard about this in the middle of the night. You're picking apples and you drive to Burns, which is not an easy drive, not a just hop on the highway drive, and wanted to hear their story and stick up for them.
Well, and that's about how it went. I had no desire to get involved into another, battle with the federal government, if you will, or with, any battle. I was looking for peace and wanted to, be able to settle down from what happened with my dad on his ranch, and was looking for basically to just kind of get back to life and enjoy my family. And I just had a new baby, and I had moved not too long ago, and when I saw what was happening to the Hammonds, I just felt moved. I mean, I was completely, it's hard for me to explain it, but I was urged to do what was right. In my mind, I felt that I had to do something. I felt I had a voice at that time because, of what was going on with with my father. And I felt, once I began to really see that the Hammonds were the salt of the earth people, and that what these federal agencies were doing to them was completely, I don't even really have words for what they were doing to them, but it was very similar to what they were doing to my family and had done to many, many others that I'd seen in my lifetime. And I knew I had to do something. So, I did the best I could. I tried to bring as much attention to it. I mean, we had literally tens of thousands of people signing petitions and, our notice of redress of grievance. And I mean, it was literally international news. This was even before we went into the refuge. And all we were asking, again, is just for the local, state, county, or even Congress to stop what was happening, just to look at what was happening, and to, see if the Hammonds really had done. I wanted them to see the information that I had searched, things like the charges that they charged the Hammonds with were domestic terrorist charges as arsenal terrorists under the Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. I mean, those type of things, and how they, how they charged them as terrorists, and just to stop and, stop the process. I just was asking them to stop, take a look at it, and see if we can find some justice here. And no one would. And so that's kind of the story as far as my side goes.
Hammond Bundy joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Sir, we'll just ask you one more question. We appreciate you making time for us. And you continue to fight. Your brother, Ryan, we know him well. He's running for governor in Nevada. You're still rolling. Is it a challenge balancing the need to fight, to stick up for Americans and people in the West with being with your family?
It is. It's a challenge. I mean, I have to give it to my patient and loving wife, and my, I want, when this all started, I had a good thriving business. I had about 25 employees, and now, they attacked my business while I was in prison, and I've got about 3 employees left, and they've been so loyal to me and customers, and anyway, so it has been a battle. And I will say this, the Hammonds and the Bundys and the Hages and the Carvers and the Gardners and all those people that have spent prison time and suffered because of these land issues here in the West, they're just symptoms of a big problem. And Trump pardoning the Hammonds is like, you know, a pain reliever. But it doesn't kill the cancer. And the problem is that the federal government does not have any place in owning and controlling the lands in the West. And we have the Taylor grazing issues clear back in 1934. We have the Sagebrush Rebellion in the 70s. And then we have these issues now, and they're in between. They're clear full of abuses and takings of property and putting people in prison. And it's all because these issues are not right, because we have not followed the Constitution. And until we do and control these lands locally with our counties and our states, we will continue to have these issues. And that's the story. That's the message that people need to understand.
Well, Mr. Bundy, whenever you're ready, you've always got a microphone here with us. Please enjoy your time with your family, and we really appreciate you making time for us today, sir.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
There we have it, Ammon Bundy, and big ups to our friend Pro Life for that one. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Jim Zamzo, and believe it or not, we're already halfway through July. But that's not stopped the weeds and insects who really seem to come out once the temperature warms up. So before they take over your home and yard, stop by your nearest Zamzo's and pick up some Zamzo's Old Top the Weeds. And
I think the Hammonds would be the first to say that the plight of the Western rancher or the Western farmer is not even close to over.
Isn't that amazing? That was the attorney from the Hammonds. Do want to thank Ammon Bundy for joining us, John Decker for joining us, David Bozell, Cindy from Caldwell, all the big stars here in the Treasure Valley. Good morning. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. And this is the attorney for the Hammonds, Morgan Philpott. But as Ammon Bundy said to us, we're not just talking about farmers and ranchers. We're talking about everything else. But if the backbone of the country is under siege, you know, what's next? And how many farmers and ranchers in Idaho feel comfortable fighting? What a noble profession that is. Farming and ranching, working with the animals, growing the crops. Those are words to most of us as we go to our supermarket, but it just doesn't magically get there. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And we see our beloved farms being turned into subdivisions. Don't we have enough subdivisions? Oh, you're anti-growth, Kevin Miller. I'm anti a lot of things. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.
Sorry, Kevin.
And Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. But think about those statements, and they're short, concise statements, and I do want to get your thoughts on this. What's next?
I think the Hammonds would be the first to say that the plight of the Western rancher or the Western farmer is not even close to over.
Now, whether you're a native or you've chosen to live in Idaho, what are we going to do without ranchers, cowboys, and farmers?
I think they're tired. I think they're both grateful, overwhelmed emotionally, a little bit tired, and kind of excited to spend some time alone.
Of course. Imagine if everything was taken away from you for doing what was right. Let's get your reaction next. We're just getting rolling. Waking up on the right side. Kevin Miller on your home for Fox News on the radio and Sean Hannity in the afternoon. 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.